The Tournament Zone.
Okay, here we are at West Coast GT in Burnaby, BC, suburb of Vancouver. After crossing the border, it was very dangerous.
Yeah, I feel like we're about to get shot by the border guard.
Yeah, highly stressful situation. He was not a nice person. But we're here, and we're live, as you can hear in the background. There's a lot of people talking live. Of course, you'll be hearing a recording. Just finished the first 3 games, so it's the end of day 1, Saturday. I am suitably exhausted. My voice is suitably exhausted.
Yeah, I'm pretty pooped too.
Yeah, you have to be really loud in this room. It's a small room.
I'm pretty pooped too. Oh, you were saying in the room in general.
There's butt crack on display, like
I know, man.
5
That's
feet
like
from my
it's
face.
really distracting me. Like we got gamer crack right there.
It's hypnotic almost.
I guess if you're into that kind of thing.
It's like I
avert my eyes.
Yeah, I got to keep my eyes closed. I can't stop looking. It burns. Okay, so games 1, 2, and 3 for me, and for you, Ricky. Let's go through them a little bit while they're still fresh in our minds.
All right.
And hopefully we'll be joined by some of the other folks here. Otherwise, we'll just be kind of sitting here looking lonely, which is, I'm used to it. I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was your game 1?
My game 1 was against. Oh boy, it's been a long day. It was against Warriors.
Yep.
I was trying to remember his name. And I can't. I
Okay.
apologize for that, but it was against Warriors, and I actually ended up getting a draw, which was a surprise for me.
Yeah, that's almost like a win for you.
That's as close as I can come to a win normally. It ended up being a really close, really bloody game. I think he was a little more scared of my army than he should have been.
Well, there are a lot of models.
And so he held back his big Khorne Death Star. It's not really a Death Star, but a big Khorne infantry Warriors unit. And he held that back, and that, I think, actually helped me get the draw, because that unit alone probably would have just worked its way through my whole army.
Huh.
The whole game came down to probably the Mangler Squig rolling a 7 instead of an 8. Had it rolled the 8, just that one more pip, it would have gone through both Hell Cannons and that unit of Khorne.
Oh, wow. You killed his unkillable BSP, right?
I
That
did
Zinch?
end up killing his unkillable, the Zinch BSB on the disc with the rerollable ones on a 3-up ward save.
Thereby proving that it's not unkillable.
Yeah, so it turns out all you got to do is hit it with a Mangler Squig. And then wait for him to roll like 4 or 5 twos,
yeah.
and then you're good to go.
All right.
So that was pretty lucky for me, but
Nice.
beyond that,
Okay.
it was a tough fight. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So we've been joined by Dan. Dan, what is your last name? Can you even hear me?
No, now I can hear you.
Okay, hang on. Let me turn your mic up. There we go.
Towards me.
There we go. What is your last name?
Minor.
Minor. Okay, so
But that doesn't mean that I'm too young to be able to drink. Apparently Pat's trying to kiss me.
Dan is being kissed by drunken gamers
you
multiple
too, Jamie.
times. It's actually kind of obscene. Okay, so Dan, you're the organizer for the fantasy part of the West Coast?
Yep, and I actually do the general organization for the whole event. So
Okay, so what all is at the event?
there is Fantasy, 40K, War Machine, Malifaux, and Netrunner, X-Wing, and Flames of War.
So Netrunner is a card game, right?
Yeah, we
Okay.
actually ended up getting no people showing up. So even though we organized an event, there was actually no participants.
Nobody there?
So,
Okay, so it's an entirely miniatures-based event.
definitely, yes.
That's pretty cool. Is that unique in Victoria or in Vancouver? Sorry, for are there other events that are entirely miniatures-based of this size?
I don't really know, to be honest. I've been running events like this for fantasy for 12 years now, so
cool.
That explains why actually, fantasy is my passion, and I've been doing this for a long time. Why we why fantasy trumps every other event at this particular event. So.
Yeah, so we're in a room here. It's one of the sort of hotel ballrooms. I would say about 2/3 of the room is dedicated to fantasy. Well, maybe 3/5, and the remaining portion is kind of split between Malifaux and 40K players. There is male making out happening beside me almost.
Does that bother you a little bit?
No, it doesn't.
Really?
Thankfully, my ears are protected from your tongue.
Peter
so.
is imposing himself on his personal space
Hi,
at this
world
point.
of the internets.
Okay, there we
This
go.
is
That was
Peter from the Chumphammer
Hi, Peter.
podcast.
Yeah, yep. We're having a little bit of cross podcasting going on.
Cross.
Don't get any
It's like
any
Dick's
ideas.
Big Cross.
Oh no!
Oh, no,
Please
God,
no!
Dick's
Please
Big
no!
Dan, I won again.
Mental image is gone. It's
My
totally
winning
messed up at this point.
So there's quite a few teams that have come along here. I know that you take care to make sure that teammates don't play against each other. How many teams are actually represented?
Well, Chop is the biggest team. In fact, they're so large that we ended up having to force them to break into multiple teams. So we've got like the Chumphammer crew, which is the guys who run the Chumphammer podcast, and then we've got the rest of Chop, which in total is probably about 12 to 14 guys.
Okay, and is that one of the gaming clubs here?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
actually a local gaming club in North Van. That's the group that I'm actually a part of. We run it up at the Eagles Club once a month, $10 basically, and
Okay.
play all day. Then there's the Greenskins, which are the Islander guys. They're the guys from Vancouver Island.
Yep.
They've got a good about 10 to 12 guys. And then you guys brought up like 7 to 8 guys.
Yeah, we brought 7.
And then there's the WCP crew, which actually is kind of a part of Chop now because we've kind of amalgamated. And that's another like 6 to 8 guys as well too. So
Okay, so about that's about like 30, almost 40 people.
exactly. I would say like when I was actually doing up the clubs at this point, I think there was actually only about 4 people who were not club affiliated.
Oh,
so.
interesting. Oh, cool. So that's kind of nice. You get it's definitely something that brings out the social side of things. To come into this event, there's a bar just outside the hall, which definitely helps. So talk us through a little bit about how the objectives and scenarios and so forth work and how they hang together, because it's certainly a unique experience for me. I've not seen this particular blend of things before, and I think it's interesting in general. So talk us through how that works.
Well, the neat part about it is that the biggest problem a lot of places have is actually creating that disparity between the top guys and actually everybody else. And the biggest thing with this is that because there's actually 3 different things to focus on, you've got actually not only your regular game, but also the strategy cards that you pick and actually the tactics of having 3 objectives on the table. What it does is it creates, for one thing, actually, the objectives, because to try and get full points for everything, what ends up happening is that to be able to get the objectives, you can't really have a Death Star.
Yep.
Well, you can, but you actually are going to be giving up, like, probably about 10 points a game, basically, because of the fact that you're only going to get the one objective, because you can only claim one.
Yep.
And then basically you've got the tactics cards, which,
So one second. The objectives
Yep.
are, in this case, they're like 3 little objective markers. One goes dead center of the table, and then each player places one outside their deployment zone anywhere they like, except in a building or impassable terrain.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so you have to be within 3 inches of that unit to claim it.
Yep.
And then there's some rules about how you
Tie breaks and stuff, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's objectives. So then you were going to talk about the tactics. Go for that.
So yeah, the strategy. The
Strategy, sorry.
strategy cards is that every game you get to pick one of 5 strategy cards. You can't use any card more than once, and it allows you to kind of tailor things towards those rock paper scissors matchups where you maybe aren't going to have a particularly good game or like maybe have a chance to even win against other opponents. But you can actually maybe tailor your strategy cards to be able to get some points out of those particular games and deny them actually of some very key points for them actually being able to be top tier as well too, because accomplishing your own strategy card is only 5 points, but denying your opponent actually is denying them a potential 10 points.
Yeah, right. So if you deny your opponent, you earn 10.
Yes.
And they obviously don't earn the 5.
Yeah.
So there's 15 possible points from those 2 strategies.
Yep.
And I think now I've had, let me see. Yeah, so I've achieved my objective, I think, each game.
Yeah.
But I haven't been able to prevent it each game, and
Yes.
it's quite tricky.
And that hurts a lot, actually,
Yeah,
yes.
and the objective markers, like, to give an idea, I played, my first game was against Vampire Counts, and he had, at the end of the game, he had his Vampire Lord left on the table and 2 units of zombies that he'd raised. But the Vampire Lord was on the objective marker in the center, and he raised a unit of zombies big enough to
be able to outnumber it and take that
outnumber me and
objective,
take down another objective.
Yep.
So here I was sitting, thinking I was sitting pretty, totally forgot about the center objective, and he took the other one from me. So it's a good equalizer, even in those games where you do get tabled.
It definitely creates a lot more to think about.
Yeah, for sure. I actually think it's so much to think about. You can't. No, well, it's not that you can't keep it all in mind. It's that you have to choose how you're gonna win.
I think it also creates outside of the box thinking, and like it really benefits those people who do think outside the box. Because what happens is you get a lot of these guys who net list and basically have those kinds of lists that just run at people and just try and beat the crap out of them. And, in our particular environment, when you talk about the objectives and the strategy cards, that's not necessarily the best way to go either.
Yep.
Because you may be exposing, for example, something that you need to protect for purposes of your strategy card or what your opponent played for a strategy card. And plus, you're actually maybe not focusing on the objectives that are in your own deployment zone as well, too. So.
Yeah, for sure. And then to top it all off, inside the battle itself, each one of them is a scenario that has... It's either based on one of the rulebook ones, or it is one of the rulebook ones, and then there's some
a
twist to it, and those twists are affecting the victory points inside to decide the win-loss part.
Yep.
So you're either winning or losing or drawing based on that. Which is what, 20, 10, and 5? Is that how it works?
20, 12, and 5.
20, 12, and 5.
So
okay.
What ends up being is the metric actually between a win and a loss is 15 points, which is actually the exact same amount of points that tactic scores and strategy scores are worth.
Right. So really you have 3 possible avenues to pursue points in. And I think the majority of people focus on beating the crap out of their opponent first. But hopefully the general comp system, like the built-in Warhammer comp system, is sufficient that nobody's really getting that 2,500 points off the whole table in turn 3 or anything like that. So you end up with an opportunity, even if you're doing really poorly, to still score it between 10 and 30 points.
Definitely, yeah. And it's the brainchild of Chris Powell, actually. He did a lot of work actually getting this all set up and getting the whole metrics of this actually into a place where it's actually in a good spot. And the reason behind it is we're big comp onions up here. We've been big fans of trying to push the envelope and get away from netlist and out, those inside of the box types games. And so what we've done is in the past is we've done a lot of judged comp. And the problem is judge comp actually ends up being so subjective that it ends up being polarizing.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you get a lot of people who are, you get tons of people who are really happy with the situation and happy with the way things end up. You always get that loud vocal minority that end up being unhappy about the way that their comp, they feel that they were unfairly judged or anything like that.
Yep.
We ended up migrating and evolving that into a system where we actually had a checklist system. But what we ended up happening is that we ended up having people, it ended up creating a new metric to break is really what it amounts to. So it ends up people, rather than, going with the net list, they go, wow, we've got this kind of comp system, how can I break that, basically?
Yeah, of course. Because that's what you do, right?
That's exactly it. And there's still that kind of metric there in this particular type of environment. But the thing is, though, is that, in my opinion, what it ends up being is it becomes outside the box enough that you end up bypassing a lot of the net lists into creating what ends up being actually balanced armies to be able to accomplish all 3.
Yeah, and actually that shows, because there are some armies here that are not really capable of achieving all of those 3 things. I think like my army suffers from it a little bit. I have very little in the way of static combat resolution. So, for example, hard for me to hold objective markers. right? Very easy for me to get there,
Yep.
but hard for me to hold them because I got a small number of models.
Yep.
And so it's like right away I can see the weaknesses in my list because I hadn't played these this way before.
Yep.
And I brought something that's like, oh, this seems good. And I can feel that there are definitely stronger choices I could have made based on objectives.
I think one of the largest examples of this is Tomb Kings is very much seen as a very weak book.
Yeah.
The only one Tomb Kings list here actually has only lost a 20th of 150 points at this point.
Yeah, so he's got 3 wins in terms of battle victories, and
With
he's
almost full points
almost
on
full
everything.
points on
Yes.
everything since then. That's Cody Jensen.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But he's a fantastic player,
He is a good player. I've played him. I played him at GotaCon as well.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to play him here, but I doubt I will because I'm not going to be on the top table. So how long has Wet Coast been going? You said you've been running
This
tournaments
is the
for 12
second
years?
year in Wet Coast, but before that, it was called the WCB GT, which was the name of our club.
Yep.
And we've, like I said, I've been running it for 12 years. So up until that point, for us, we think beer and Warhammer is synonymous. So, for us, we've been running it out of Legion for the majority of the part. But then what ended up happening was Legion actually ended up closing down and being renovated into a big condo, which is very common in Vancouver. So, high price real estate the way it is up here.
Yeah, for sure.
So what ended up happening is we ended up being pushed out of our particular space, and when we looked at, hey, the best way to attract out-of-towners is to be in a hotel where it's much easier for them to be able to drink and have fun and stagger up to their hotel room. In fact, actually, a lot of locals are taking up on that for tonight, actually, as well, too. So
Nice. Yeah, cool. This is obviously one of the U.S. Masters qualifiers. You and I talked earlier in the year about putting it on the circuit.
Yep.
This is kind of our Canadian experiment. So I'm really hoping that the ballot gets passed that allows Canadians to compete. From what I've heard in talking to the various chairmen and so forth, nobody's against it. So fingers crossed it should all pass, and then we'll be able to include the BC guys if we go out there. So
I certainly would like to see that because, as you can probably attest, is that we've actually got a pretty good meta up here, and we actually have a lot of really good caliber players. So
yeah, the meta up here, I mean, it's I think it's actually more vibrant than what we have in Seattle, for sure.
It is, yeah.
Because a lot of ours gets kind of sucked into War Machine because Privateer Press is based there,
well, as much as the Chop guys are a bunch of drunks,
yeah.
There are also very great ambassadors for the hobby.
Yeah.
A lot of them have fabulously painted armies.
Yeah.
Even if, for example, Pete doesn't actually pay somebody to paint his armies.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not they paint them or not, fabulously looking armies always kind of sell people on games as well too.
Yeah.
That's my big pet peeve of actually War Machine is that a lot of those guys are playing with bare metal or bare
I
prime
just went
stuff.
in, walked into the room, and there was nothing but metal on most of the tables.
But is that any different where you guys are at? Are a lot of
that's
people
kind of
painting your
typical
stuff
for War
too?
Machine down there.
Yeah.
But our fantasy people are getting better about painting.
Right,
Because
right.
I put a lot of emphasis into paint points in my tournaments, and I think that's helping them.
It's the same thing that we do here, right?
Yeah.
We're not actually putting as many paint points as we have in the past.
Yeah.
We are penalizing people who don't have at least a 3-color minimum. So, so, to be honest, actually, and I was talking actually a little bit about with Aiden actually online a bit, talking about how, the meta up here actually, Death Stars actually aren't as common as they may be in other areas. And that's because a lot of us actually use a lot of diverters.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is you end up, I sacrifice maybe 200 points worth of stuff to make sure that your 1,200, 1,400 point unit is doing nothing all game, and I'm just focusing on everything else you have in your army. And
I don't really see very many of them on the tables here. I think it's all pretty balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very balanced, very competitive lists up here, which is really fun.
Yeah.
With high level of play as well, too,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
if you're not actually playing with the net list, push it forward type lists that are going to win by themselves, you actually have to at least have some kind of a strategy behind your army to be able to make them work. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've also been joined by Paul Garby. Garby?
It's actually Garby.
Garby.
Yeah.
It's my phone keeps pronouncing it Paul Garb, and it's like that throws me, and then it doesn't understand whenever I tell it
It's all
Anyway.
right. Common mistake. Common mistake.
So Paul.
That sounds like an excuse to me.
So Paul is the advisor for the Masters for the Northwest region. So I'm the chairman, and he's the guy that keeps me honest.
Yeah, we got a good relationship going on there.
So he's played a bunch on the East Coast, and so when we talk about comp and scenarios and everything to do with the tournament scene, he's got a lot of the understanding of what happens over there. Whereas, in comparison, the West Coast is incredibly laid back. And so what we're currently trying to figure out is, this is why I was so interested in the objectives and the paint points and how you do it all is.
I remember you guys were actually quite skeptical online, actually, of the whole system actually.
I wasn't sure how well it was going to work. Yeah, I mean, having played for 3 games of it, I think it does. I think you need to do it in a GT. It has to be for people who are pretty serious about playing Warhammer.
Yep.
Right. It can't be. I don't think it's the sort of thing you would do in like a one-day casual event or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's too complicated for, say, like the Sparkle parties. I think that having 3 things you have to track, the normal scenario, then the card, then the objectives, that becomes a lot for people who are new to the game to really track.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, no, I completely understand that, definitely.
Up here, you guys have, it's the majority are veterans. I don't really see anybody here who I didn't see at Godicon.
Yeah.
So they all are veteran players, and I think that's easy for them to handle. And
actually, I was going to say, I just played a guy. It was I was his 7th game ever.
Okay.
For Warhammer.
Brian?
Yeah, Brian.
Yes,
yeah.
That's
Great guy.
one of Dale's buddies, yeah.
Yeah, super cool. First time I played against dwarves or whatnot. And I will say, like, even just the fact of trying to play the game was very, like, difficult. And then, like, I was having to remind him about the tactical objectives and whatnot. And even just that sort of got lost. And so I kind of agree, like, for a one-day event, I think it would be very, very confusing. But I think at the same time, too, it provides an interesting dynamic. Like, I was looking at it, and the breakdown as far, like, what is it, 100 points for the pure, like, victory points, like the wins, and then 75 points for the tactical, and then 75 points for the strategic. Yeah. But there's awards for each category. And really, like, the way I go into GT or, like, any kind of tournament is, like, what award do I want to try and shoot for? What do I feel like has a really good chance? And it gives a lot of different, like, options, like being like, okay, I understand, like, I might be not very mobile army, but I can go and get a lot of victory points difference, so I can pull out these wins, or very mobile army, so that way I can go and get these tactical objectives. Exactly. And so I think it provides a really good kind of balance that I didn't really think of before.
Yeah. So effectively, instead of just saying best general, you're saying we got the best tactician, the best strategist. Is that
the best general actually is the name of the
best general
battle score,
is the battle score one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's actually the overall as well too, which is
so the
best
overall,
of all 3. So
so for the overall, the painting points only come into it as a penalty if you're unpainted.
That is correct. Yeah, and that's actually new this year. We have done paint judging and stuff as well too, but in the past. But the problem comes in, it's the same thing as like what we're talking about with Army Comp and Army judging as far as that goes.
Yeah,
it ends up becoming highly subjective. You know, I may like, non-metallic metallics. That might not be your gig. And, if you're judging, now that may actually color the score that you end up getting. Yeah. And so, there's... And who's right, really comes down to it, right? Just because it's not my thing doesn't mean that, that you're not right in your own position, right? So because it's so subjective, it becomes really, really difficult to score.
I'm going to actually disagree with you. I think it's actually very objective, at least in the way that I've seen it done, like, that I feel right. Like, you may not like non-metallic metallics, but, like, understanding the difficulty of that, I think that when I've seen tournaments actually go and be like, okay, if you want to do non-metallic metallics or you want to do advanced blending, like sort of understanding the actual technique behind it and not necessarily appreciating it as art, but rather the skill that was put into it, I think that's the important thing. And so...
No, I don't disagree. Like, I am actually personally, as much as I use that as an example, I'm not a fan of non-metallic metallic, but I do appreciate the art and the amount of effort that actually goes into it.
Yeah.
It's kind of more just as an example. But now, let's say, for example, if it became like a judge thing, you can go with the checklist style system where everybody's hitting the check boxes. And we've done that in the past, actually, where, if you're actually getting your 3-color minimum with, like, a little bit of extra highlights on top of that and a little bit of, like, solid basing on top of that, that you're hitting at least 75% of what the scoring criteria is going. But really, at that point, there's going to be some other people who are, like, maybe the really super high-caliber painters that are going to be like, well, why are you only valuing, everybody else? This guy's only got 3 colors, and he's hitting 75%, right? So there's always going to be somebody who's unhappy. You can never make everybody happy all the time, right? Yeah. So in this way, what we've done is we've still actually, there is still painting voting, and actually the criteria there is there that actually best painting actually still gets recognized. It's just not as... We're not actually putting as much emphasis on it as far as actual best overall is concerned.
Yeah.
And so you put the penalty in there to encourage people to have painted armies so that it's a better experience all around, but it doesn't really affect your chances of winning
exactly
other categories.
Well, that's exactly it, because I'm like everybody else. I like seeing a painted army against me, and I very much appreciate a very well painted army. Like I am still awestruck at like the quality of armies that we see here on a regular basis. Our region actually has got some very, very good painters, and like Patrick Caroline and stuff like that as well too. And it's not like it actually is highly affected the quality of armies that show up. I think actually what it's done is it's become more inclusive to the people who maybe were more intimidated by actually having to hit a high painting criteria to be able to compete.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Wet Coast, it's a 2-day GT. Is it always kind of end of June?
Last year actually was at the end of July, so this was a move back of a month. Okay. And that actually is because of the fact that to try and get better prices with the hotel, we wanted to try and avoid
peak season.
Wedding high season.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so next year, as the Masters participation increases, we're going to be looking at moving to probably just having GTs be part of the qualifiers.
Okay.
Because this year we have some 1-day tournaments and some 2-day tournaments, primarily because the whole thing was just getting established. But next year it'll be all GTs. Now I think is there 4 regular GTs up here in Vancouver?
For the 2 days,
I was going to say, it seems like there's quite a bit.
We do actually have a very vibrant, especially Warhammer scene, actually.
Yeah.
We've got a lot. Like the Chop guys, like between just the Chop guys, we get like 24 to 30 guys showing up.
Yeah.
And so we've got, obviously, Wet Coast. Yeah. There's Godicon. Last year there was T-Shift. Although that had low enough attendance that I'm not. It's questionable whether or not it actually happens again this year.
Yeah,
we have Kippers.
Yeah.
And like I would call Kippers, Wet Coast, and Godicon as like the top 3.
Okay.
But even so, that's 3, right? That's a lot than a lot more other regions that are kind of get in the area. So
yeah. Actually, I was talking to Jen earlier. She runs Kippers.
Yep.
And
she also writes for Bell of Lost Souls.
Oh, there's also Attack X in Kamloops, which is actually only like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour.
Oh yeah. Attack X.
She after talking to her, it seemed like there was just a really good, strong core of gamers that show up for these tournaments, which seems like why you have such an expansive range, actually, which I'm kind of impressed about.
And they spread the tournaments out throughout the year, so it's like, okay, you can still take the weekend off because it's not 3 weeks apart or whatever. It's a couple of months apart.
Which is exactly why more of you Americans got to get your passports. And get
right. And that was the other thing she was talking about. It seemed like that it was kind of a repeat. Like a lot of times that the tournaments were the same kind of winners or whatnot, and that's why I'm actually really excited to be up here, because I haven't met any people up here. I haven't been in contact. I've been mostly in contact with people in like Oregon or whatnot, and so getting to meet the people. I played the winner of Godicon and didn't even know it first round. And I pulled a draw, and so I feel a lot better about myself in that draw.
Exactly. Well, we love the Portland guys because they're just a great bunch of guys to play against.
Yep.
But every single year we come down to, like last year we went down to OFCC, which is their big team event.
Right.
And the Canadian teams took top 3. There was, the top American team was 4th.
Yeah.
So we do have a lot of high caliber players up here.
I remember hearing cries of filth actually related to that, but we'll say nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think the main thing that we really got to get going is to get you guys to come down to some of the GTs as we start running them more regularly in Seattle areas. That's not too far, I think, for folks to come down. Oregon's a bit of a trek, right? It's like 5-6 hours.
Yep.
Where Seattle's just like 3 hours away, so it's not too bad.
Well, we go down to Oregon once a year for OFCC anyways. Like we're definitely willing to make that 6.5-hour trip. So that's like not a big deal for us. So we just actually I think we need to have more cross communication between the different groups and actually make sure there's more awareness.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, look, thanks very much for taking the time to talk with us, Dan. I think I've seen everyone from Seattle come past saying, when are we going to eat dinner? So I think that's probably next time.
I'm starving.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks. Take it easy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Guten Morgen.
All right. It is Sunday morning at West Coast GT, and players are very slowly starting to trickle in. With us today, we've got Anthony Greenman, who's one of the guys from our local club in Seattle. Welcome on the show, Anthony.
Thank you, Aiden. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, but I'm very happy to be here in Vancouver and on the podcast.
Cool. So Anthony brings his demons of Slanesh everywhere and kind of rubs them on people.
I try.
As Slanesh likes to do. So how's your experience being the first 3 games?
It's been pretty good overall. I feel like I've gotten gradually better with the list, a little bit more efficient, learning its strengths and its weaknesses. A list of this nature, due to its just inherent limitations, I put on myself, keeping strictly mono Slanesh. I don't take, anything else from the Chaos Demon list. There's going to be some limitations there. High shooty lists tend to be my downfall. High armor save list, 1-up cav list, things of that nature. But 2 losses, 1 win so far, and I'm feeling very optimistic for today.
Cool. So talk us through your list a little bit. I know the most striking thing about it is that big Keeper of Secrets you've got right in the middle of the...
Yeah, I use the Forge World Keeper of Secrets, which is, as you well know, a very effective centerpiece for the army.
Doesn't it have multiple boobs? I mean, I'm pretty sure that...
I think it's the most boobed model ever.
I think it has 8 breasts, 4 sets, if I'm doing my math correctly. But yes, it's very boobed, breasted. The Keeper of Secrets, of course, is the general for the leadership of 9. Unfortunately, not 10 anymore. Yep. 2 greater gifts on the Keeper. I'm trying to maximize my opportunity to get the 2-up armor save.
Right.
Since it's random, of course.
Yeah.
Then I used, this particular time, I took 3 Heralds at level 1, just because Magic tends to be an area where I have shortcomings as far as just, maybe it's my luck, I don't know. Okay. But more channeling opportunities and more opportunities to cast my little Slanesh spells like Acquiescence.
Yep.
So 3 Heralds at level 1. I put 1 in the Chariot. I put 1 as a BSB in the front rank of my 59 strong Demonette Horde.
Yep.
And then I put another in Steed of Slanesh and a unit of Seekers of Slanesh.
Okay, so you're kind of spreading them out there. So with the Keeper, what lore is he taking?
Shadow, of course.
It. I don't know what the correct pronoun is for him.
For it.
You gotta take Laura's Shadow. I've learned the hard way to debuff, the combats that you're trying to get your combo charges in, because
Mind Razor on those Demonettes is lethal.
A Mind Razor on a Exalted Chariot can pretty much chew up anything. That I've found.
Does the Chariot come with Always Strikes First built in?
No, it does not.
Okay, so do you take that Locus on any of your heralds?
I take it on the steed, the mounted one, the Steed of Slanesh.
Okay.
So that unit of 10 riders of steeds has always strikes first.
Okay, cool. So 2 more games today. What are you hoping for in terms of finishing record?
I'm hoping I would be very happy with a win and a draw.
Okay, so
maybe
end up 500. Yeah.
Would be nice.
Right.
Obviously, 2 wins would be great, but realistically, I think a win and a draw would be respectable.
Do you think you and Ricky are going to end up in the final game like you did at Godicon?
Final game, round 1 or table 1. That's us. Yeah. We're gonna submarine it right back to the top.
A little context here for people: me and Ricky almost invariably end up playing each other at the end of tournaments for whatever crazy reason. Probably because we always lose. But
I didn't want to say it.
It's looking less and less likely that Ricky and I will play this tournament, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm too far down, and you're a rising star.
I'm in the middle. I'm the mediocre power.
All right, cool. So, any armies that you've seen in the display that we've had? There's a whole bunch of fully painted armies here today. I would say most of them are fully painted. Any of them really stand out in terms of looking cool or?
Yeah, there are several armies I've been very impressed with. There's a very impressive vampire count army that I'm actually my next game that I'm playing with, and the gentleman happens to be standing.
We should get him on to talk. Except he's eating a burger.
He is eating something currently, but it's a very impressive army, very conversion heavy.
Yeah,
has sort of this kind of ethereal, very sort of ectoplasmic color scheme.
Yeah, it
very
looks
nice.
great.
Yeah.
We'll try and get him on. His name's John Falkowski. I played him yesterday, actually. Really nice guy to play against. So
I'm looking forward to it.
A fun game. Oh, he's coming. He's coming over. That's great.
Oh, he is coming over.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna get him on to talk about his inspiration and his.
Yeah, Ricky's just getting him settled down.
We were just talking about you, John, and how much we like your army.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So welcome.
Thank you.
It's Falkowski, right? Am I saying that right? Yeah. So go right up close to that microphone there, and let's make sure we can hear you. Okay. You want to sort him out there, Ricky?
We literally just grabbed John. Are you still recording?
Yeah, I'm still recording.
Okay. Yeah, we literally just grabbed John, and
I never stop recording, man. No, I can edit out anything that's that is dull and boring. But anyway, John, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I can hear you good. That's the important part. Okay, so we were just talking about some of the armies that were on display, and the first one that came up was yours, and we looked over, and there you were. So talk us through some of the cool conversions that you've done for your army, because it's really heavily converted.
Yeah, super hit. A lot of it's actually from Chaos Warrior kits, and I've used kind of a filio material that's sort of, it's like paper, and I attach it to a lot of it. So I wanted to make sure the whole idea was kind of a ghostly army, and so it's kind of flowing through the air. So almost everything except for the skeletons don't have legs, right? So it's
nice,
yeah. So
nice, yeah. So you've got a big unit of wraiths in there.
That's correct.
Which I, was fairly scared about yesterday, and but also very visually impressive. The thing I really liked about them is they look like they're coming out of the rocks, which really put me in mind of, pardon me, of like the Lord of the Rings kind of, barrow wraiths and that sort of thing.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And then your BSB. Talk us through that model.
Well, he's just a big old like Chaos Lord, and heavily converted, and then so the idea where I got him from was actually another guy in Britain had sort of a similar army, and he was doing a kind of a shipwreck sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
And so and that's sort of where some of the ideas came from, but. Yeah.
So the Chaos, it's the mounted Chaos Lord.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then, because obviously we're just kind of describing it for people, it's a little tricky. Hey, is it okay if Ricky brings the model over? Hey, Ricky, bring it over. Bring the BSB over. No. I didn't.
Yeah, go for it.
I feel kind of bad because he fell foul to my Wild Riders very quickly, and I didn't get a chance to get a good look at him. So he's got a very cool kind of T-shaped banner. He's mounted on. Is this like a? Did you sculpt that, or is that?
No,
is that a piece?
That's a rock just from Micro Art Studio.
Okay, so it's oh nice. Okay, so I thought they were.
The banner effect is particularly striking with how dynamic.
It's very, very cool. It's kind of like a ragged. I got to get a photo of this actually and put it on our website. It's a really cool model. So if I get a couple of photos on there, and then you guys, if you're listening, can take a look and get an idea for the feel of the army. I think I did take a photo of the whole army, but I'll make sure and take another one. So how come you? What made you choose that theme?
Well, it was a good question. I wanted something a little bit different. I wanted something a little ghostly. I was trying to build an ethereal list, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, well, okay, what can I do with that? And some inspiration from the net, of course, and so it happened, right? The guy on the boat there, it's kind of the river Styx sort of idea.
Yeah. So this is a corpse cart conversion that you've done.
Yeah, the corpse cart. Yep.
Yeah. I didn't even. So I'm not a hugely experienced with the vampire counts as an army, and I saw this boat thing. I'm like, what the heck is that? So I made sure and shot it really quick. I'm like, if I don't understand it, shoot it.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's a good philosophy in life.
Yeah.
It seems to be a beacon. I don't know. It hasn't lasted any game yet, and I haven't really used it. So
yeah.
And Jesse's talking about taking one in his army. So
yeah. So this thing is. It looks. You've got like a poleman at the back with a big scythe, and then almost like a navigator guy at the front who's kind of putting his hand out to show the direction, and then a whole bunch of skulls and one thing that I pointed out to you yesterday I really liked about your army. When you see a lot of ethereal stuff, either online or at other tournaments, they tend to have that very heavily ghostly blue color that features, whereas you've just used it very sparingly.
Yeah.
And I think it actually makes the whole army look way more ghostly. Everything's dark and disturbing, but those little hints of that brightness, such a contrast that it's like, oh, that's it's not obvious in your face, and so you really notice it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It draws the eye, definitely.
Yeah,
It sort of
for sure.
centers it on the model where it should be.
Yeah.
Very
Cool. So
visually striking.
how's your tournament going so far?
Oh, good. Made played a lot of good players, and I always enjoy this tournament. It's always good. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And you're from the Vancouver area?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Cool. Well, look, thanks very much for coming
Yeah,
on.
no
Thanks
problem.
for
Thank
talking
you for
about your
having
army.
me.
Yeah, great.
Good luck, you guys. I hope we have fun.
Thanks.
Likewise.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for the interview.
Oh no, it's great. It's a great army.
Yeah.
So Ricky has gone off in search of further victims, I think. Meanwhile, yeah. So that was John's army, and I think certainly going to get one of my votes for best painted. We get to vote for three best painted, and always hard not to put Ricky first. Unfortunately.
No, even with our bias acknowledged,
Yeah.
his army is top
phenomenal.
notch.
Shh, he's back. Stop talking about it.
Just to give some sort of frame of reference for people, there are many people here I've ran into who have said that the photos online don't do it justice at all.
Yeah, they really don't.
And they don't.
Okay, so we're being joined by the lovely Jan Aspden. Am I pronouncing that rightly?
Good job.
Oh, there we go. No, every time I see it, I split it into two words, and it's like an asp den.
That's exactly how
Okay.
my husband explained it to me when we got married.
You're going to have to come closer so we can hear
Okay.
you on the microphone, or bring the
I've
microphone
never
closer.
had my own microphone before. It's
Oh,
exciting.
there you go. Yeah. This is how we roll. So Jan is, let me see if I can get your gaming CV correct. You have, you write for the Belle of Lost Souls.
Yep.
And you run the Kippers tournament, which is in Vancouver Island.
Yep.
And that's an annual. That's a gaming convention. Do you run the whole convention, or
I
just the?
do.
Oh, you do, right? So,
Wow.
so
Well, I should say I organize it. I do have some people that run the specific events for me.
but you carry the whip.
I do.
Okay, so tell us about tell us about Kippers.
Kippers started out just as an 18-man fantasy tournament, and then last year I expanded it and included War Machine Magic, 40K. We do it at the Legion in Nanaimo. Well, we did last year. I'm looking at bigger space this year. And it turned out to be great. We had upwards of 30 fantasy guys, 30 40K, 24-ish War Machine players, and I lost count of the Magic players that were in and out all
Yeah.
night.
They're
hard
all
to count those guys.
interchangeable, you know.
And because for me, a tournament is more about the social aspect. That's why I liked doing it at the Legion, because everybody can just sit around and hang out afterwards. And we tried to do it so that there was things going on in the evening that people actually wanted to participate with, so that they would come back and hang out after they'd had dinner and whatnot. So
Yeah, cool.
we wound up doing Malifaux and X-Wing on the Saturday night.
All right, cool. So how long have you been running Kippers
This will
now?
be its third year.
This will be the third year. Cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're looking at is if we're going to be expanding the U.S. Masters circuit next year to focus primarily on 2-day GTs. I'm trying to figure out what is going to make the best. What's the best set of tournaments to use from Vancouver, because we need to kind of find a balance between BC tournaments, Seattle tournaments, or Washington tournaments, and Oregon tournaments, so we get a good geographic
mix,
split.
yeah.
So it's always interesting to hear. When do you run Kippers?
Kippers is the last weekend in October.
October, okay.
Yeah.
So that's actually the same weekend that we're running Sparkle Party.
Yeah, that's going to be our
That's
Sparkle
too
Party.
bad.
I know. We'd love
Well,
to
maybe
come
I'll
up.
have to fix that for next year.
Yeah.
We'll see. We could probably move ours around too.
Yeah.
Well, next year we'll coordinate on
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's
well,
what we've done up
we're doing
here.
a-
Is I started working with the other TOs to coordinate dates up here, so we weren't piggybacking on each other. And
Are
Yeah.
you doing
keeping
a
everything too
costume
close.
contest at yours?
I haven't yet.
Oh, we're doing costume contest
The-
with ours.
The
Yeah.
guys have told me they want me to do cosplay at it, but I know nothing about the stuff, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where to go to organize that.
Well, our one is pretty simple because it's like the weekend before Halloween. It's going to be
Yeah.
Yeah.
fancy
Well, I
dress.
tried last year. I did tell them, because it was the weekend of Halloween last year as well. And I said, if anybody wants to show up in costume, go ahead. You want to
Yeah.
bring Halloween-themed stuff, go nuts.
Right.
Cool.
Nobody did.
Yeah.
But
So where did the name come from? Kippers.
when I was doing it as just a fantasy tournament, I was trying to think of a name, and I was trying to think of something medieval, because I've always been interested in medieval stuff. So I went online and I was looking up tournaments in the medieval history, and the Kippers were these little peons that ran around for their knights collecting the trophies from the tournaments. And if they were in a battle with somebody and they won their helmet or their armor or their horse, the Kipper was the one who went and collected it. So I thought, what more are we?
Yeah.
We're,
Actually, did not know that.
No, that's a
I
really
hadn't
interesting
either.
piece of
I took a
trivia.
lot of flack from the Chump Hammer boys initially, because all they knew about Kippers were that they were a fish.
Well, I'm sure.
I didn't know that. I actually saw my first Kipper last weekend when I went grocery shopping. I
Oh
was
yeah,
like, oh.
no, Kippers are
There it is.
delicious. And that's what I thought. I'm like, why did they name it after a fish? But I imagine that the little guy who was sent to run around is actually, they nicknamed him a Kipper because a Kipper is like a little
Yeah,
fish that you
that's,
eat
I
in the
kind of
morning.
get
So
that too
Yeah.
from what
Yeah.
I've read.
That's
So-
clever.
And then I kind of just stuck with that.
No, that's great. So you're running it again in October this year?
October this year, yeah.
Okay, interesting. So we need to make sure that we don't steal too many of your players for the Sparkle Party.
Yeah,
I
it'll
guess
be-
anyone that can't come down for Seattle, obviously, the same weekend is going to have the
Yeah.
ability to come out to the island to play.
Yeah.
So that's
Cool.
cool. So what are you working on right now for Bell of Lost Souls?
Well, I've been doing a series on how to play fantasy. The one that actually published yesterday was tournament etiquette, and I've been asked to expand on that a little bit more by some of the readers. So I'll probably work on a little more focus on specific things that they've talked about.
Cool.
Cool.
So that's like, isn't that like part 10 of a 10-part series?
Yesterday
or
was
something?
part 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
On tournament etiquette, right?
Well, the whole series isn't on tournament etiquette.
Wow,
It's just
very
how to
cool.
play.
I'll have to
I
go
did-
look that one up and read it.
I did a Getting Started series. The Larry, the guy that runs Bell of Lost Souls, had asked me to do a Getting Started series. And most of the guys I know are vets, but I used to work at G-Dub, so I'm used to teaching brand new players. So when I wrote it focused on the new players.
Yeah.
So the How to Play series was a little bit of a continuation of that one, and
Yeah.
then also gearing it a little more towards the vets
Yep.
and some of the things that I've seen at events that
Cool.
may or may not be happening.
And what army did you bring today?
I brought the Empire this weekend.
All right, cool.
It's been an interesting.
Beautifully painted, by the way.
Well, it's not fully painted, but it's getting
It's
there.
mostly there, yeah.
And you had like a two-headed beastie.
The Griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk us through your list a little bit.
When I decided to do Empire, I'm a Bretonnian player by trade. I've been playing Bretonnians for almost 10 years.
Do those Empire Knights look a little Bretonnian, or is my
maybe?
eyes deceive me? Okay, they do. Okay, because I was looking at that army going, "Oh, it's a Bretonnian." No, it's Empire. It's Empire. No, it's Bretonnian.
When somebody took an Empire list to Godicon a few years, and they did Marienburg, and they had, or not to Godicon, to Adepticon, and they did that big trunk with the Kraken and the ship
it's
and stuff.
beautiful.
I thought it was beautiful, and that's the first time I'd ever heard of Marienburg. And when I was looking through trying to decide on my colors, and I was reading the fluff, and I thought, my kids really affect how I paint my armies. My Bretonnian army is themed around the Mike the Knight kids TV show. So I have a character that's Mike the Knight, and I have all the little village people are in my men-at-arms, and I borrowed them from my Empire army this weekend.
Nice.
So when I was looking at originally, they're all into Jake and the Neverland Pirates. And I love the land ship from Forge World, and I had some of the Mannon's Blades models.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at it, and my kids were watching this episode, and it had this whole desert theme. And they had a land ship. And I went, I have to have that in my army. And so now I was starting to think, how am I going to do this as a desert theme? And I didn't like the whole pyramid thing with the Empire army. It just didn't suit the Warhammer thing. But so then I started looking at the models, and I knew I've never had an army that I could really use a giant model monster effectively in, and I thought, I'm taking a Griffin, I don't care.
Yeah. Good for you.
So I went with a Griffin, and because I play Bretonnians, I didn't want to do the all-night list.
Right.
So I'm dominantly infantry. I have a 50-man block of halberds with a 25-man detachment, more halberds, and a 20 block of archers.
Nice.
And then a second block of...
Good for you, an Empire player actually taking infantry. That's very commendable.
Well, and I'm not heavy into the artillery either.
Yeah.
When I first started playing them, we've also got the Forge World mortar bases, which is what I've got my rocket battery and my Hell Volley blaster mounted on right now. But I started playing them with mortars, and I just didn't like the strength too. But I would rather use rocket batteries than the Hell Volley blasters all the way. And they're considered the underdog of the artillery.
They're really cool looking, though.
I don't enjoy the cannons. I don't find them very accurate.
Well, cannons are pretty accurate in general.
Well, they can be.
But we generally have an anti-black powder stance on this side of the table. So
my husband plays Imperial Guard, and when he played Empire, it was all guns, and it wasn't for me. I didn't want to be the gun line, and I didn't want to be the cavalry, so I went a little bit different.
Cool.
So.
And how's your record so far after day one?
I'm at 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss.
Cool.
Oh,
and
congrats.
What are you hoping for by the end of the tournament?
I'll be happy with what I got.
Excellent.
I've always been kind of mid to bottom tier with the Bretts, so this is the first time I've used the Empire at 2,500 points. So I'm happy that they've managed to pull off at least 1 win.
Sweet.
Sweet.
All right, cool. So I think we're going to be getting started playing shortly, so we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're at the end of Wet Coast GT. 5 games done. I won 2 and lost 3, so sniff. How about you guys? We got with me here, we got Jesse who brought his Skaven, Anthony, who was on earlier, brought his Demons of Slanesh, and Ryan, who brought his Lizardman. This is the posse that came up from Seattle with me. Jesse, how did you do?
I ended up 1-4.
1-4.
First day was a complete shutout, and I managed to get my last game just by a bit. So.
Okay, cool. At least you didn't finish 0-5. That's a really positive way to look at it.
My opponent finished 0-5, so that made me feel a little bit better.
And what was thanks. Dan's just handed me the complete breakdown of the results, so we'll take a look at that in just a sec. What do you think was kind of letting you down?
It's the first time. I don't think we see nearly as many Warriors of Chaos players. Definitely a different meta up here, and I gotten so used to kind of having an all-around but not overly powerful list. This was the first time I think I fought some really competitive tournament armies.
Yeah.
The meta up here is definitely a little different than we had back in Seattle.
Yeah, we're a lot friendlier.
Yeah.
Handsomer, too.
That's true. So, Anthony, how did you do?
I also finished 2 and 3. My first game of the last day was a rout of the vampire counts, and the second was a close match with the Beastmen that I ultimately lost to the mighty Doombus.
Oh, you had the fighting the Mino Bus?
The Mino Bus,
That's
yes.
It. Yeah, that's hard to beat because you can't just feed it chaff because it just gets worse.
No, it really is the case. It did take that basically his entire army, including that bus, the entire game to crack my horde of demonettes.
Oh, but they finally got cracked.
They did. But it was a valiant fight, and I feel pretty good about the result overall.
Nice. Ryan?
I as well finished 2 and 3. It's 2 and 1 on the first day, 0 and 2 today. So
yeah, that was the same.
A little
with
bit of swing.
Yeah. Anything that? What do you think was the weakness in your army, or?
I think I need more Saurus in the unit with the Slan.
Okay, so how many were you running?
29 plus a Scarvet plus a Slan. So
okay, so they just didn't have enough damage. They couldn't soak enough damage.
Yeah, I found them dying quickly, especially if I miscast.
Yeah,
some of them that way.
So, do you think you'll keep running with that sort of same list and just bulk out the Saurus, or will you change it up?
Been thinking about it, and we started talking with Ricky at lunch, going back to the Ethereal Slan, and just keeping him next to the Saurus block or some block, so he gets a lookout Surge save and then a ward save against whatever.
Yeah, that's going to be making him very hard to kill. Yeah.
So we'll see.
All right, seems good. Okay, so what have we got for the results there, Jesse? Why don't you tell us like the top 3 for Wet Coast, best overall?
Yeah, so looks like Cody Jensen came on top with the Tomb Kings.
That is unbelievable. Actually, I think that's actually a testament to how the scenarios and objectives and so forth work, because his army was definitely good. There's no doubt about it. I think he had that special character in a really big unit of archers. Did you face him, Jesse?
I did. That was my first game, and he had me just about tabled by turn 3. I think he definitely made that army to win.
Yeah.
I talked to him at the last tournament, and he said he was basically building that army just to say it could be done.
Yeah.
So I definitely think he had a mindset of making it as competitive as possible,
and it was
really bringing it out.
He didn't finish best general.
Best overall.
He was best overall. So the best general here was purely for battle points, so victories and draws.
And I think looking at raw scores, the best general, the highest raw score was Peter Davis.
With his Wood Elves?
He was using Wood Elves, and I think the only issue there is...
that was another trick list, I think.
Yeah, it was all ambushing with all the Glade Riders.
All ambushing core, and then he had a big bus of Sisters of the Thorn with their 4-up ward, and I didn't get it. Did any of you play it?
I did not.
No.
So I'd be interested to see what that list actually looks like. And then, so he came in the best overall. Did he come in the top 3, Peter? No?
Peter Davis was second, yeah.
He was second? Yeah. Okay. And I think he was edged out because his army wasn't painted?
Right.
And then third we've
got Dale Johnson.
Who's sitting beside me.
Another player who...
Dale's Chumphammer podcast guy. And so he brought which army? Ogres. Okay. Which I think was like the first tournament you've played Ogres in?
It's my 7th game of Ogres.
7th game with Ogres? So either you're an awesome player or Ogres are really easy to win with?
I think it's kind of a both.
A little bit of both, yeah.
A little bit of both, he says modestly.
Well, I won this last year, so fair it's not good.
Cool. So overall thoughts on the tournament then, guys?
I think...
2 thumbs up from Ricky in the distance.
I think if you're going to take one takeaway from this tournament as a whole, I think would be that do not let anyone tell you that an army list is not viable.
Yeah, for sure.
And in that sort of context here, the last 2 Canadian tournaments that we've attended, Bretonians finished best overall, and then Tomb Kings finished best overall. And as we all know, these are 2 lists that people typically like to tell you are not exactly in the running for best overall.
Yeah.
So, I mean, run what you want to run and go from there.
Yeah.
I mean, with the scenarios and sort of the TOs are implementing sort of objective kind of tweaks to their scenarios. anybody can win any game, depending. You know, with a good grasp of the rules and the look of the dice. Really, run what you want to run.
Okay, Ryan, any what do you think? What was your overall thoughts on the tournament?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, I hadn't done a big tournament since last summer when we went down to Oregon, so I used to go to them all the time years ago in 7th, and just now getting back into an 8th for tournaments as far as it goes, and looking forward to the rest of the summer.
Yep. Any additional thoughts, Jesse?
Yeah, I just it surprised me. This is the second GT we've had up here, and I've honestly yet to have a bad game. I've yet to have a lot of wins, but still, every game you can be tabled and still have a blast, and I think that's a big takeaway.
Yeah. I think the venue was a little on the cramped side, I think, because we were sharing it with 40K and a couple of other games, and so there were times when I'm like, I've got nowhere to put my stuff, but you know, it's certainly no worse than any other place I've been, and a lot better in some ways. They had a pool and a hot tub and a bar, and it's right in the same venue. So I think overall it's a really good tournament, really good experience, really run very well.
Absolutely,
all the games started on time. All of the terrain was there. So yeah, I'm really happy it was part of the U.S. Masters circuit. I'm unhappy that I didn't finish as high as I wanted, but you know what? There's always Sparkle Party.
Yes, there is.
So, any final thoughts before we wrap up? Ricky, anything you want to say? No, he's done.
Come wherever you are. Try to find yourself in a tournament in Canada, in Vancouver and Victoria particularly. Nothing but class acts up here.
Yeah, and very, very high standard to play.
Absolutely.
You know, so, all right, great. Well, we'll wrap it up there, and we'll use this as our tournament zone for the next podcast.